Welcome back, Raider Nation and my champions. In this video, we're going to be taking a little closer look at our new defensive coordinator, Gus Bradley. We're going to look at his various stints in the NFL, as well as what I think will be our expectations to be looking at in this offseason and beyond. I had mentioned Gus Bradley in my last video as the one who I thought would be hired as defensive coordinator. If you haven't seen the video, I'll put the link in the description. And for all those who have seen the video and have subscribed to my channel, thank you very much. Here, I just want to give you a quick history of Gus Bradley if you don't know anything about him. This is basically his background in coaching here in the NFL. He actually started in North Dakota State as a defensive coordinator. He was selected by Monty Kiffin to be the linebacker coach for the Bucks. Yes, that is during the tail end of the Gruden era there from 2006 to 2008. I'm going to mainly focus on the last three positions, defensive coordinator, head coach, and defensive coordinator, most recently with the Chargers. And Monty Kiffin recommended Gus Bradley to Jim Mora Jr., who was the coach of the Seahawks at the time. That's how he got that position. So let's get right into the first major position he had, and that was with the Seahawks. First, I want to explain how I broke down the defensive evaluation here. I based it on these statistics here as far as team defense, which consists obviously of passing and run, and this is based on yardage, points allowed, sacks, and turnovers, which I think are pertinent. So this is how they finished relative to the rest of the teams in the league, and this is the total number of yards, points, etc. in the parentheses. And then here, as far as this would be 9 interceptions and 11 fumbles to break that down. I also added an initial first row in gray. Now this is the year before he came on to that team, so you can actually see where the team stood before he got there. And then the last row will be the last year he was there. Okay, so let's get, and also I want to explain the notes. These are significant changes, whether it's the front office, coaching personnel, or pertinent free agents or draft selections here. For example, Earl Thomas in the first round, Cam Chancellor in the fifth. So he came into Seattle. Not very good defense, obviously, with 30th in the league, the worst in the league in pass defense, etc. Mike Holmgren had retired after a stint there. Obviously, he was his claim to fame was being the Packers head coach with Brett Favre. Jim Mora came in for 1 year here. I didn't note anything significant draft-wise because they didn't really get anybody of note, especially on the defensive side. There was a slight improvement here as far as the total team defense. And then we'll just go to 2010, 11, and 12, and that's where they started formulating what everybody would call the Legion of Boom. Pete Carroll was hired from USC here. They had a new GM, John Schneider, and they started working on this defense. They had Earl Thomas in the first. They got Cam Chancellor in the fifth. Those are two great players there at the safety position. Pass defense was a little bit better. They still need some work on the corners, obviously. Everything else was pretty much steady. The next year, this is where they kind of unofficially formed the Legion of Boom here with Brandon Browner and Richard Sherman here. They got Browner from the Canadian Football League as a free agent, and Sherman in the fifth round. And you can already see the dividends being paid off here. They've gone from kind of a bottom feeder pass defense to a little bit above average here. Team defense is growing. The turnovers are getting larger. The sacks are kind of remaining the same. And I'll make a note of that when we start doing the overall evaluation. I do have a slide from all of the teams that he covered here, and we'll go over that in the summary of what I think about that. And then his last season in 2012, right before they won the Super Bowl in 2013, another great season. They were first in least points allowed. The defense overall was fourth, pass defense, run defense. A great performance overall. They got Bruce Irvin as an outside linebacker. Um, okay pick at first in the first. Bobby Wagner, an excellent middle linebacker. And I put also that they got Russell Wilson here in the third because when evaluating these teams, I just wanted to evaluate the defense, but obviously they won the Super Bowl the year after, and a lot of that had to do with Russell Wilson. He came in and started as a rookie. So and then I want to note here, so he came in at, this defense was 30th, ended up as fourth. Obviously, made him look very good in that season, and he ended up with the head coaching job with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So he came in as head coach for Jacksonville in 2013. The previous season, the team defense was at 30th. They had a new owner and also a new head coach in Mike Mularkey, who only lasted one season, obviously, where he came in. They also changed out the GM in 2013 to David Caldwell, and part of the staff that Gus Bradley brought on was Bob Babich, who was his defensive coordinator, also Todd Wash, who was the linebacker coach, both of which he had ties with North Dakota State. Nothing really of note as far as the draft or free agent pickups on the defensive side. This is the draft where they got Blackman, the wide receiver, didn't really pan out. And you can kind of see not a whole lot of movement this first year. Second year, he was there. They basically went for offense, obviously. They moved up to get Blake Bortles. They got Marquez Lee and Allen Robinson, which you would think that would be a pretty decent haul. I'll talk a little bit more about Bortles and once we get to 2016 here. Defense, not a whole lot of change here. They didn't really start working on the defense till the third year, ironically, from a defensive-sided head coach here. And they got Dante Fowler Jr. with their first round pick, third overall. Unfortunately, he tore his ACL in the preseason, didn't play the whole year, obviously, and the rest of it was more offense. There was some improvement, not a whole lot overall, until we get to 2016, and obviously Jalen Ramsey in the first round, Miles Jack, who's a decent player. He was projected much higher, but he had a knee issue, so he fell in the second round. And then Yanni Ngakoue in the third, which was basically a steal. And I say that because he had 8 sacks in his rookie season, and he didn't start right away. He was behind Dante Fowler for a while, and they decided to put both of them on either side. And Fowler ended up with 4 sacks as well. This is where you start seeing that strong Jacksonville defense, more of a disrupting type of defense here. Unfortunately, it didn't equate to wins, and obviously I would have to attribute that to Blake Bortles. During these 3 seasons, while Gus Bradley was the head coach, he had a total of 51 interceptions and 18 fumbles. That's almost 70 turnovers. And honestly, I don't care how good your defense is. When you turn the ball over that many times, you're not going to be successful as far as wins and losses. So he was fired late in the 2016 season, and then the next year he came on board with Anthony Wynn and his coaching staff with the Chargers. So he came back the next season as a defensive coordinator, again under Anthony Wynn as the head coach. The previous season, not too bad as far as defense. 16th overall in team defense, pretty middle of the road. Points allowed is a little high, obviously, 29th. They did grab Casey Hayward out of free agency, and they drafted Joey Bosa here in this season. So before their first season, like I said, new head coaching. They got Desmond King in the 5th round, and then a lot of mainly offensive players. Noted Desmond King because he's a Pro Bowler. Pass defense went to 3rd. You can also attribute that to Joey Bosa disruption here with the 5th. They already had Melvin Ingram before this, and it's pretty good tandem overall. And then, as you can see, they continue to focus mainly on defensive side. They had Derwin James fall to them in the first round here, which was a great pick here, middle of the first round. Defenses continue to get better, continue to work there. And then what they wanted was more of an interior pass rush here with Jerry Tillery in the first round out of Notre Dame. Not really panned out so far after 2 seasons, to be honest. Nasir Adderley, not a bad safety. He had some injury concerns in the previous season, 2020. Again, team defense pretty good overall. Sacks not so much. I think like I said, they're relying a little bit too much on Bosa and Ingram, and that's why they wanted that interior presence as well. And then in 2020, obviously with their first pick, they got their quarterback of the future, Justin Herbert, but they also had a second first-round pick, and they picked up Kenneth Murray, outside linebacker from Oklahoma, basically a tackling machine. He had over 100 tackles last year, solid against the run. Overall, the team defense went from 16th to 10th. Passing defense went from 20th to 9th. At the end of the 2020 season, if you don't know, Anthony Lynn was fired, as well as the entire coaching staff, and that's how Gus Bradley became available for the Raiders. So here's a summary of his performance from the time he walked into the door where they currently were as a team to the time he left the team. And what I want you to focus on is this pass defense column, to be honest, because that's our biggest problem of anything. I think the run defense got a lot better once Gunther was gone and Marinelli was the interim coach. It looked like they were swarming and doing better. Not great, but not terrible. The pass defense is obviously the focus here, and he's shown results, be it as a defensive coordinator or a head coach. I had to add where he currently comes into the door here as far as the Raiders go. This is how the Raiders finish. Pretty dismal all the way across the board. I did do a similar analysis for Paul Gunther's tenure, his 3 years there. And basically with these stats, everything remained about the same or got worse since he came in. So I didn't really want to go into that, and honestly, it doesn't really matter at this point. It's about evaluating our new DC and whether or not he can help us. And I think he's had a track record of that, especially on the pass defensive side. So I want to look now on how I think Gus Bradley is going to mold this team, adjust based on his track record and what he's done in his previous stints. The first one I want to focus on here, obviously, is the free safety position. Eric Harris is not going to be with the team next year. He's a free agent. He's moved on, literally, and I think the Raiders have as well. And frankly, I think we can do better with the position. I look for an Earl Thomas or a Nasir Adderley type here, either in the draft or free agency. Ball hawking type of guy who can make some plays. Next, I want to talk about the will position. You'll be hearing in other videos, and I've heard in other videos about how he likes to run a modified 4-3 Leo, which is basically a 4-3 type defensive end, like we have here Max Crosby, traditional, and then kind of a hybrid type of a defensive end outside linebacker. Now, didn't really have that per se in Seattle with the Legion of Boom, unless you want to count Bruce Irvin. But I didn't see him putting his hand in the dirt too much, to be honest. Obviously, he did have that with Melvin Ingram, and this could be a spot where Ingram, he is a free agent, could come here. I would be remiss without saying all these rumors about Khalil Mack. He would fit this position, but I would have 26 million reasons why we would not be signing him. Obviously, 26 million on the cap. That would be more than, or just about the same amount as Carr and Mariota right now. I don't think he's worth it, to be honest. I think Ingram, if we can get him at a good price, might be an option, or we could look at positions in the draft. Now, I left this option here as far as Jonathan Hankins. He is a free agent, but there is an option here depending on which way they want to go. So, as I talked about previously with this will position, if they do go for a Melvin Ingram type player or him himself, I could see them re-signing Hankins if they can get him for a good price. Hankins is a great player, no doubt, but he's a run stuffing guy. He's not going to give you that interior type pass rush for the most part. He's actually more fitting, I think, of a 3-4 type nose tackle. But like I said, he's a solid player, but we need to get more pass rush. So either we keep Nick Morrow as a starter. I'd like to keep him as a backup. Either way this goes, I think he's a solid player, and we need the reserves on the linebacking side, to be honest. But even if he's not the starter and we get Ingram, I would keep Jonathan Hankins. If not, if we do go this route and we want to get that interior presence like they tried to with Jerry Tillery, that would open the door for, again, a guy like Leonard Williams if we want to open the pocketbook, or another similar type player. I know Williams can bounce between end and tackle, especially in a 4-3 setup. Again, this is dependent on what Gus and the organization wants to do here at this will position. And the last one's obvious. It's the corners and safeties, the secondary in general. It's tough to say. I think this is where he's going to earn his money, so to speak, as far as evaluating the young talent we have here and making decisions whether or not to start them, bench them, or ultimately cut them. I don't see that really happening this year, but I'm thinking a little bit more long term. I think Joyner's going to be gone. I said in my previous video, I don't think he's worth the money. This is where, like I said in my previous video, you could very well open the door to bring in a corner, Michael Davis, who's unrestricted free agent from the Chargers, to either challenge for one of these starting positions or be the nickel backup. And I think I would like that because at the very least it would push these guys. They're young. They do have some glimpses of talent, but been very undisciplined, especially with Jonathan Abram. He could be our Cam Chancellor. I don't want to compare them to the Legion of Boom at all. Maybe a lighter version, but I think the potential is there for a great secondary here. So that said, I think Gus Bradley is probably the best candidate given our issues covering the pass. So what do you think? Was Gus Bradley a good hire? I'll put a pinned comment below and you can put your thoughts. If you enjoyed this, I know it's a little bit long, but we had a lot to cover. Please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell so you'll get notifications of all my new videos. Thank you for watching and supporting this channel, and go Raiders.